Click, the lock on the front door sprang open, and someone pulled it open from the outside. Buddy, the Samoyed, who had been dozing by the bay window, perked up at the sound. He leaped off the bay window and raced to the foyer, wagging his tail obediently. Emily Carter pushed open the door and saw Buddy sitting and waiting for her. Her weariness immediately vanished. She placed her purse on the shoe rack, leaned down slightly, and rubbed Buddy's head. "Good boy, Buddy. Waiting for your mom? Usually, you're just napping." Buddy woofed once, wagging his tail happily. Emily didn't linger. Methodically, she prepared Buddy's treats and dinner. Not feeling hungry herself, she turned and headed for the bathroom. Soon, the sound of rushing water filled the air. Tick-tock, 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 the wall clock swung back and forth. Buddy glanced up at the hands, then, carrying his empty bowl, trotted unsteadily to the bathroom door. The next second, the sound of the hairdryer stopped, and the bathroom door opened. Emily saw Buddy holding his bowl, tilting his head and wagging his tail. Understanding dawned on her, and a smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "No, you can't have that much to eat at night." Buddy dropped the empty bowl and placed his paws on Emily's white skirt, whimpering softly. Emily wasn't having it. She gently tapped his head and walked past him into the study. She took a violin from the closet and walked with it to the floor-to-ceiling window. Emily looked out at the distant lights, the heavy traffic, the neon lights of the state, dotting every corner. In the distance, a huge LED screen played a promotional video of a popular celebrity. The star, dressed in a snow-white suit, sat like a proud prince at a white grand piano, his distinct fingers dancing across the keys, his body swaying to the rhythm of the music. A ripple of emotion passed through Emily's eyes. She rested the violin on her shoulder, tilted her head slightly, and gently loosed her eyes, then drew the bow across the strings. As the bow rubbed against the strings, the room was soon filled with melodious music. The chandelier next to the floor-to-ceiling window cast a soft, warm yellow light, and her shadow stretched across the floor. Her bare feet were cold on the tile, her slightly curled hair cascaded down her back, and she stood ramrod straight. Her hands moved constantly, as if she were lost in the music. The sound was continuous and winding, filled with endless sorrow. She was 28 years old, 11 years removed from the first time she met the boy. She excelled in her studies and, the year of the SATs, was named valedictorian, in humanities, of the state, and was successfully admitted to an Ivy League university. How much excellence does it take to reach a bright future? During her undergraduate studies, Emily represented alma mater in many competitions, spanning more than 1 or 2 regions. After graduating, she chose to pursue graduate studies. Later, after graduating with her master's degree, every item on her resume was a trump card. Finally, she went to work for a foreign company, where she spent 2 years climbing to the position of supervisor. She was beautiful and excelled in every way. People never hesitated to praise her, calling her heaven's darling. Emily leaned back on the couch, Buddy lying at her feet. She scrolled through trending news on her phone, occasionally giggling at the comments. Suddenly, her finger slipped, and she came across today's trending video. It seemed to be from a Chamber of Commerce event. Someone was playing music on a piano on stage, and next to the piano, a woman was dancing gracefully. Both were wearing casual clothes, but they still seemed to shine as they performed. The video was taken from a distance, but it wasn't hard to make out the pianist's facial features. Emily's breath caught. She opened the comments section, and all kinds of comments flooded her screen. The most popular. Our comment was from a user named Chloe, who said, "I'm about to take her home and play accompaniment for her for the rest of her life." The calm lake in Emily's heart was like a pebble had been tossed into it, a small stone, but it created ripples in her. She remembered being invited back to alma mater to give a speech. A freshman asked her on stage, "Senior, you're so amazing. Do you have any regrets in your life?" Regrets? Of course, she did. She picked up the microphone, and the corners of her lips curled slightly. "It was an unrequited love that I pursued without success. His name was Ethan Hayes, a sophomore in grade 3. From the moment he entered high school, Emily noticed him. It wasn't their first meeting, it was a reunion after 3 years. At that time, Emily was the student body president. Her job was just to issue announcements, passing down orders to certain department heads who would then delegate them to the next level. Ashley Davis, Emily's best friend, was the head of the Arts and Culture department. She said she had seen her crush during a routine inspection at the school gate the day before, so the next morning, she dragged Emily with her to the school gate to check appearance. Emily wasn't interested in watching Ashley fawn over a boy, and besides, the weather in early September was still sweltering, and she had broken out in a sweat after standing for only a short while. But due to her duties, she had to continue to stand there and accompany Ashley, secretly vowing in her heart that she would never come again tomorrow. It was then that she saw Ethan Hayes in the crowd. The boy looked clean and sunny, his backpack in his hand. His striking appearance made him stand out in the crowd, even in the school's ugly school uniform. Emily pursed her lips and tightened her grip on the notebook she held in front of her. Ashley nudged her shoulder. "There's a freshman over there who's pretty cute." Following Ashley's gaze, she saw the boy she had just noticed. "But he's not wearing his school ID, and I can't let him off just because he's handsome," Ashley asked. "Emily, will you go?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Me? What about your job?" Ashley grinned. "I'm finding you a boyfriend. Go quickly, or he'll leave." Emily knew, of course, that Ashley was only doing this because her crush would be arriving soon, and she was afraid of missing him, so she was pushing her forward. But she was happy to go. Emily steeled herself and, holding her notebook, walked up to the boy. "Hey!" The boy was startled, then switched the backpack from one hand to the other. "What's up?" Emily could now see his face clearly. His face had lost much of its childishness from before, his features had matured, and his contours had become more defined. There was still a small mole on his right jawline, not very obvious, but very distinctive. She had wondered if Ethan Hayes would remember her, but after 3 years, it was hard to remember a brief encounter. But this time, she wanted Ethan Hayes to remember her. Emily averted her gaze. "You're not wearing your school ID. I need to register your name." Hearing that he had to register his name, the boy panicked immediately. He scratched his hair and asked politely, "Senior, can you give me a break? I'm a freshman, and I don't really know the school rules yet." The boy's voice had a youthful quality unique to his age, and his words were ordinary, but they made Emily's heart race. She feigned composure and touched her ear. "Then, how about you just leave your name? I'm just going through the motions so I don't get points deducted." Hearing her words, the boy breathed a sigh of relief. He curved his lips into a smile. "Thank you, Senior." He scribbled a few strokes on Emily's notebook and handed it back to her. Emily lowered her eyes and glanced at it. "Ethan Hayes, is it?" "Yeah." "Okay, you can go." "Thank you, Senior." After Ethan Hayes left, Emily opened the notebook again. The boy had written Ethan Hayes in a wild and unrestrained manner, scribbled but handsome. So, his name sounded good too. That was the first time Emily knew Ethan Hayes's name. That wasn't the first time she had met Ethan Hayes. The first time she met Ethan Hayes was when Emily was in the 8th grade, when she went with her violin teacher to listen to a piano competition. She had always had a strong interest in music and could distinguish between the skills that some insiders knew. The first few contestants were mediocre, and they didn't cause much of a stir in the venue. She didn't have much emotional fluctuation either, until Ethan Hayes came on stage. The boy was wearing a white suit. After coming on stage, he bowed to the audience in the center of the stage, and then slowly walked to the piano and sat down. The set of movements was slow and elegant, like a Western prince. In an instant, Emily's eyes were drawn to him. She felt that this boy was different from others. Sure enough, the moment his fingers pressed the keys, a string of winding and continuous music jumped from his fingertips. The notes seemed to come alive in his hands, twirling happily around him. Apart from the music, the venue was quiet, and everyone was watching the boy's performance. Emily, too, her eyes full of the boy on stage. When a piece was finished, the boy walked to the front of the stage and bowed, and then applause rang out from the audience. Emily's teacher also clapped his hands. Good. Emily looked at her teacher. This was the first time he had commented on a performance tonight. The teacher smiled and said, "Mr. Peterson really taught a good student." There was no doubt that the boy won the championship in this competition. After the performance, the teacher took her to the backstage, where the boy who had just performed was with a man about the same age as the teacher. As soon as they met, the two teachers started chatting, and then the teacher asked Emily to take out the gift for the boy, a tie. The teacher had taken Emily to pick it out before coming. The teacher said, "Congratulations on winning the championship." Emily handed over the tie. "Congratulations." The boy smiled and took it, and then suddenly thought of something and handed over a box. "This is for you, as a return gift." Emily looked at the teacher, who signaled that she could accept it, so she accepted it. Inside the box was a bracelet, very exquisite. The boy said that this was a bracelet invested in by the investors of this performance, and he, as a boy, didn't need it. "Thank you." Emily knew that this bracelet was very valuable. That was her first acquaintance with Ethan Hayes. The image of the boy playing the piano left a shadow in her heart. The third time they met was just a brief encounter. That day, after finishing PE class, she and Ashley had just walked out of the playground. After running 800 meters in PE class, her face was more flushed than usual, and there were fine beads of sweat on her forehead. Because it was hot, she had also unbuttoned one of the 3 buttons on her collar. Just as she walked out of the gate, she ran into Ethan Hayes head-on. The boy was holding a basketball. His school uniform had been replaced with a basketball jersey, and he was wearing a wristband on his hand, with a large number 3 on his chest. Emily couldn't help but feel nervous, and even tightened her grip on Ashley's arm. The next second, she slightly raised her chin, looked at Ethan Hayes generously, and met his eyes for a moment. Just as Emily was secretly happy, and the corners of her lips were about to curve up, Ethan Hayes calmly withdrew his gaze and walked past her without changing his expression. The wind from their passing even lifted a little bit of her hair. Emily's smile froze. Emily had been the center of attention since birth. Good-looking, excellent in academics, good personality, and all-around talented. These were all labels that others had placed on her. She was too outstanding, so even people who had only seen her once would remember her. So, when Ethan Hayes didn't recognize her, the frustration in her heart plummeted. So, he didn't remember her at all, not 3 years ago, and not now either. Emily stubbornly believed that if she was outstanding enough, she might attract his attention. That was the 4th time she met Ethan Hayes, on Campus Avenue. In addition to being the student body president, another title she held was the president of the music club. She had an exceptionally good sense of music since she was a child, so her family had her learn the violin as an extracurricular activity. When she first entered high school, she signed up for the school's club activities, and before long, the former president resigned in order to focus on her studies and recommended her to be the president. Facts proved that this was the right decision. At the school's 50th school anniversary, in front of a group of visiting state leaders, the choir she led won the championship, and the accompaniment for the entire song was her violin and another member's piano. She also gained recognition at the 50th school anniversary because of that performance. That day, she was taking a new group of members to practice their courage on Campus Avenue, because the first requirement for going on stage was not to be stage fright. So, in order to set an example for the new members, she played a song on the violin on Campus Avenue. Her fingers gently pressed down on the strings, and one hand pulled the bow, and melodious music flowed from the friction between the bow and the strings. She stood in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by a circle of people who applauded, and passing students couldn't help but turn their heads. This scene was nothing to Emily. She opened her eyes and was just about to push the performance to a climax when she suddenly saw Ethan Hayes' figure appear in the crowd. Her breath caught, but she quickly came back to her senses and continued to play the violin in her hand. But the distraction had already summoned her thoughts to his side. They were standing not far away, and she could still hear the faint sounds of conversation over there in the continuous music. "Do you know who that girl playing the violin is? You should have seen her, right? She's very famous in our high school." As soon as these words were spoken, Emily became nervous, and the bow in her hand unconsciously sped up a lot. She was also looking forward to his answer. And in Emily's peripheral vision, Ethan Hayes just glanced at her with a faint expression. "Don't know her." These 3 words were like a heavy bomb that detonated in Emily's heart. He had never known her. Was this a blow? Emily seemed to be wrong. The person she was trying so hard to attract had never remembered her. When the performance ended, there was a burst of applause all around. Several sophomores swarmed up and praised her in a flurry of voices. "Senior, you're so amazing." "Yeah, the performance was really great." "Senior, how long have you been playing the violin?" Faced with these words of praise, Emily couldn't quite smile. They might not be able to hear it, but she knew very well that she had played several wrong notes during the performance because of her distraction. She turned her head to look at the place where Ethan Hayes had just been standing, but he was gone, replaced by another group of people. Emily averted her gaze. This was a sense of frustration. Emily hadn't expected that her momentary infatuation with Ethan Hayes would turn into love. From one encounter after another, deliberately taking detours to his grade, and the routine inspections of the freshmen every week, without realizing it, her peripheral vision was filled with him. The sophomore asked from the audience, "Senior, can someone as outstanding as you also have an unrequited ed love? Wouldn't it have been less regrettable if you had been proactive with your conditions?" Emily smiled, her voice a little hoarse. It wouldn't have been. Emily thought that as long as she was good enough, she could stand with Ethan Hayes. Every Monday at the flag-raising ceremony, as the student body president, she had to go on stage to preside over the ceremony. When the teacher read Ethan Hayes's grade in the script on stage, she would take a few more glances in that direction. Even though thousands of students were wearing the same school uniform and standing neatly under the stage, Emily could always find Ethan Hayes's position at a glance. The boy wasn't standing very straight, and he wasn't listening very carefully to the leader's speech. His body always leaned to the other side to chat with others. Then, after being reminded by the teacher, he would reluctantly stand up straight. Ethan Hayes was also really excellent. He was always in the top 10 in the monthly exams in his grade, and he was always on stage to receive awards at the monthly assembly. Emily's grades were good, but it wasn't easy to get into the top 10 in this key high school. She was more carefree, and with the addition of violin training after class, she generally kept her ranking between 11th and 20th, so she didn't feel much pressure. But when she saw Ethan Hayes on stage after a monthly exam, she couldn't be carefree anymore. She wanted to stand next to Ethan Hayes. Emily had even less time than before. She used to go to the playground with Ashley in her spare time, but now, except for Ethan Hayes's fixed basketball time, she basically stayed in the classroom and didn't go out. In the second monthly exam that semester, she successfully made it into the top 10 in the grade and went to the stage with Ethan Hayes to receive awards. Even Ashley was amazed by her efforts. "I said, Emily, you're already so good, there's no need to work so hard." Emily didn't stop writing with her pen and kept writing math problems. "It's still a little bit short, not enough." "This isn't enough?" Of course, it wasn't enough. She wanted to appear in Ethan Hayes's sight in a very excellent way. As long as she was dazzling enough, Ethan Hayes would notice her sooner or later. Ethan Hayes was excellent in all aspects, but the only shortcoming was that he also had the temperament of boys of this age. He loved to play and loved to do things that violated school rules and regulations. Occasionally, Emily was patrolling along the fence with a group of student council members. Suddenly, a backpack was thrown over the fence not far away. The backpack drew an arc in the air and finally landed steadily on the ground. Then, a person climbed over the wall and jumped down. The person also landed steadily on the ground. The next second, he turned his head and saw that Emily's eyes collided with his in the air. The surroundings were quiet, and the student council members behind her were watching the scene without saying a word. Ethan Hayes stood up and scratched his head. What a coincidence! Emily poofed and laughed. The student council members behind her who knew him smiled and joked, Ethan Hayes, can you pick a better time to jump over the fence? Aren't you just delivering yourself to our doorstep? In front of a group of classmates, Emily couldn't use her position for personal gain. She very properly took out her notebook and had Ethan Hayes write down his name and grade, and then let him leave. After Ethan Hayes left, Emily felt that it was about time, so she dismissed everyone and had them leave. After everyone around had left, she took out the notebook again and flipped to the page with Ethan Hayes' name on it. Looking at the familiar handwriting, she smiled. Ryup, the page of the notebook was torn off. Emily carefully folded the page and put it in the other pocket, then put away the notebook and walked towards the school building. This was not a good behavior, but she was willing to be Ethan Hayes' protector. She had only glanced at Ethan Hayes once, and that glance had lasted for many years. In the crowd, she could always be the first to discover Ethan Hayes' existence. His green basketball jersey, with the number 3 on the front, the boy's appearance almost occupied Emily's entire youth. Compared to the little prince in a suit, Emily most often saw the boy in his school uniform. Speaking of which, she hadn't seen Ethan Hayes play the piano in a long time. Emily had never thought that this whole unrequited love thing would happen to her, because instead of secretly liking someone and paying attention to their movements, what she wanted more was a bold and passionate youth. She used to think that sending a love letter was an old-fashioned method, but when she looked down and saw the pieces of paper filled with sentences of love falling from her pen, she suddenly felt a little funny. When things really fell on her, it was like subverting her previous views on everything. When she succumbed to a love, she was just an ordinary girl. She would also fantasize about sitting openly on the steps of the basketball court and watching him play basketball, giving him a bottle of water when he was tired, not having to pretend to be expressionless when they brushed past each other, and not having to deliberately detour to the door of his classroom. Later, she found that she could no longer control herself from being satisfied with these things. She wanted to stand in front of him openly, and she no longer had to hide the love in her eyes. So, she wrote page after page of love letter. She wanted to confess her love. At the school's school talent show, the music group teacher had specially reserved a closing spot for her. Although Emily didn't lack opportunities to perform on stage, this was the first and only chance to be in front of Ethan Hayes in the spotlight. That day would be her highlight moment, and she wanted a passionate, radiant, and regret-free youth. That day, the high school specially hired off-campus makeup artists to help Emily with her makeup. She was already good-looking, and her face was pleasing to the eye even without makeup, let alone after makeup. Even the makeup artist kept praising her for everything. She was wearing a formal dress and holding a violin in her hand. Even standing among a group of people waiting to go on stage, she was still the most dazzling presence. Emily wasn't interested in the programs. She just wanted to find out where Ethan Hayes was. She looked through the curtains at the seats in their grade, but Ethan Hayes wasn't there. Soon the show was coming to an end, but Emily had not seen Ethan Hayes from beginning to end. Emily, the teacher waved to her from the other side of the curtain. It's your turn, come and get ready. Emily walked over with her violin. Several sophomores she knew were whispering good luck to her. She smiled and said thank you several times. The music on stage stopped, and then the host came on stage and introduced Emily's program. Let us welcome Emily Carter from Grade 2, Class 1. Whoosh! The lights in front of Emily suddenly brightened, and the spotlights on stage shone on her, causing her eyes to flicker for a moment, but she quickly returned to normal and walked slowly and gracefully onto the stage. She heard a lot of hissing sounds from the audience. Emily hooked the corners of her lips. This was her home court, the place where she shined. She put the violin on her shoulder, tilted her head slightly, and then drew the bow. For a moment, the sounds of conversation in the venue suddenly stopped, and the sound of the violin also came out of the friction between her bow and strings, wandering throughout the entire hall. As the violin came to an end, she gently raised her eyes to look down at the audience. Not surprisingly, this time she saw Ethan Hayes. He was standing not far from the side of the stage, his eyes looking past the crowd towards her. The waves in Emily's heart churned, and the speed of her playing also sped up a bit. Finally, a song ended, and there was a warm applause from the audience. Damn, I don't understand it, but I feel like this senior is so awesome. Really? This song is so good. What's the original song? Emily put down the violin, took a step forward, and held the microphone in one hand. This song is selected from Elgar's Salade d'Amour. Thank you for listening. Her gaze crossed the crowd and looked at Ethan Hayes standing in the corner. Here I would like to take the time on stage to say a word. In an instant, she stopped talking. Emily saw that a girl suddenly popped up next to Ethan Hayes. The girl intimately hugged Ethan Hayes' shoulders, her mouth opening and closing, as if she was saying something. Ethan Hayes was shaken by the girl, but his hands were still protecting the girl, as if he was afraid she would fall. His face was showing an expression that Emily had never seen before, an expression that a boy would only show to a girl he liked. Emily's heart tightened, and she slowly withdrew her gaze, her eyes looking at the teacher in the audience, and the classmates sitting behind the teacher. They were all waiting for her to speak. No wonder Ethan Hayes would never look at her no matter how good she was. Even if they were standing on the same stage receiving awards, his gaze would not fall on her side, but on the audience below. It turned out that there was someone in the audience who could be seen even without shining. This passionate confession ceremony could not be reached. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she had her usual smile back on her face. I wish everyone progress in their studies, a happy life, and happiness every day. I wish everyone, and I wish you too. There was a whooshing applause from the audience. Eily followed the instructions to go backstage. She could no longer hear the congratulations from the people around her. Her mind was full of the scene that had just appeared in the audience. She had been waiting for a long time for this confession, and she had done a lot of mental work, but in the end, she found that there was already someone else next to the protagonist. Thump! Emily suddenly thought of something and hurriedly picked up her skirt and ran out the door. She was going to the school building. She was going to the school building to get back the love letter she had put in his desk. She found Ethan Hayes' seat in the dark, and she looked at the outermost part of the desk. The pink envelope she had placed there before going on stage was still there. Emily breathed a sigh of relief, and just as she picked up the envelope and stood up, the light above her head suddenly came on. She was startled, and the envelope slipped from her grasp, fluttering to the ground. Emily Carter didn't react to pick it up. Her eyes met Ethan Hayes', who was standing by the back door. Her heart tightened, and her mind went blank, forgetting what to do next. Ethan Hayes' gaze shifted from her to the envelope on the floor. He pursed his lips, saying nothing. More than him not knowing what to say, Emily Carter preferred to think he didn't want to. Feigning composure, she bent down to pick up the envelope and asked with a smile, "You must be in the wrong grade. This is 11th grade." It was a clumsy lie, but they both tacitly played along. Ethan Hayes chuckled. "Senior, you're the one who's lost." Ethan Hayes' grade was located downstairs from Emily Carter's. Emily Carter pretended to just realize it. "Oh, right. She lifted her skirt slightly and walked out. "Thanks. No problem." The moment she stepped out the door, Emily Carter almost couldn't keep it together. How could Ethan Hayes, so intelligent, not see through her clumsy acting and lies? It was simply that he didn't want that thing to happen either. Emily Carter slipped the envelope into her book, sealing away the last bit of courage she had for the night. Never mind, it was best to avoid trouble. Emily Carter learned about that girl. Her name was Chloe Bennett. She wasn't a stellar student, and her only real advantage was ballet. But thrown into high school, a place teeming with talent in every field, she was just another ordinary student. Yet, despite not being outstanding, she was always in Ethan Hayes' sights. That budding crush she had wanted to boldly pursue was nipped in the bud. What is unrequited love? Maybe it's that every time I turn my head, it's for you. A one-sided love is just an endless weight in a sea of emotions. Emily Carter forgot when she added Ethan Hayes as a friend, and from then on, her feed was filled with all kinds of photos from her life. He wouldn't like them, he never liked them, but Emily Carter hoped he might accidentally tap the like button once. Ashley Davis noticed Emily Carter's behavior. One night during after-school study session, she asked Emily Carter, "Why have you been posting so much lately?" Emily Carter played with her phone, the corners of her lips slightly curved. "Have I? I guess it's okay." Ashley Davis was speechless at this. Emily Carter saw Ethan Hayes playing the piano again at the school anniversary. It was also the first time she directly saw that girl. The girl was standing in the middle of the stage in a ballet outfit, and Ethan Hayes was playing the piano in the corner. All the lights on the stage were focused on the girl, with only one light falling on Ethan Hayes, as if reminding the audience that there was also a supporting character here. Emily Carter hadn't imagined that Ethan Hayes, so outstanding, would be willing to play a supporting role. It had been a long time since she had heard Ethan Hayes play the piano. She had wanted to calm down and listen, but as soon as she closed her eyes, the image of that girl dancing gracefully on the stage would appear in her mind. Whether her eyes were open or closed, she couldn't escape. She admitted it, she was jealous. If she could, Emily Carter never wanted to come into contact with that girl in her life. But against her wishes, she happened to witness the girl being bullied one weekend. Although she was jealous of this girl, she couldn't ignore the scene before her. Emily Carter forgot how she managed to bluff those delinquent girls. In any case, this scene of a hero saving the damsel ended with them running away in disarray. Emily Carter's hair was a mess, but she still tilted her head and asked, "Are you okay?" The girl was calm, shaking her head. "I'm fine." Emily Carter squatted down and picked up the cigarette butts on the ground. Those girls didn't look that old. They must be middle schoolers. How dare they mess with you? Chloe Bennet straightened her skirt and smiled at Emily Carter. "My stepmother's daughter. She saw that my dad bought me a necklace and wanted to take it today." Emily Carter was stunned. Although Chloe Bennet only said one sentence, it wasn't hard to hear the indifference in her tone and the expression on her face that showed she was already used to it. She didn't want to interfere in Chloe Bennet's family affairs. Just as she was about to leave, her hand instinctively reached into her pocket. Thump! Emily Carter's mind went blank. The next second, her eyes quickly searched the surroundings for the necklace. "Senior, what are you looking for?" Emily Carter's head was buzzing, and without looking up, she said, "The necklace." "Did you drop your bracelet?" "I'll help you find it." Before the sentence was finished, Emily Carter saw the necklace on the ground not far away. "I found it." Her steps faltered mid-stride. At the same time, another voice came from the entrance of the alley. "Chloe." A figure brushed past her and ran to Chloe Bennet to CK on her. Emily Carter didn't have the mind to pay attention to anything else. Her mind was blank, and her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the necklace. The pendant of the necklace was made of glass, and now the small pendant was broken in half. On the better half, there were several cracks in the transparent glass. Plop! A tear fell from Emily Carter's eye socket and landed on the ground, but she didn't react, as if she couldn't feel it. Her dream was shattered, and the only thing she had was also broken. "Is it broken?" Chloe Bennet walked up to Emily Carter. "Senior, how about I buy you a new one?" "No need." Emily Carter stood up abruptly, clutching the broken pendant in her hand, and walked towards the exit of the alley. The thing she treasured most was broken on an ordinary day. Just like she hadn't expected that one day, the boy she liked would have someone he liked. But what right did she have to blame anyone? She could blame whoever broke it, but not herself. Although she already knew the result, Emily Carter still looked for many stores to ask about the pendant, but without exception, there was no way to fix it. She gave up. On a very ordinary day, she carefully locked the pendant in a box and placed it in the deepest part of her drawer. She didn't pay attention to what happened next. She was now in 12th grade, and the SATs/college entrance exams were the most important thing. Emily Carter knew that Ethan Hayes wanted to go to music school in New York City, and she wanted to go too, so she had been preparing for her arts exams. Gradually, she stopped going back to class and devoted herself to preparing for the arts exams. Then, she was selected with the highest score in her major and returned to high school to focus on preparing for the academic portion of the SATs/college entrance exams. In the last 2 weeks before the SATs/college entrance exams, the high school prepared for a school pep rally. It was also on that day that she saw Ethan Hayes in the crowd. She hadn't seen Ethan Hayes for a long time, but she would think of the boy in her mind during countless dark nights, and then continue to work hard for that non-existent, one-sided promise. To Emily Carter's surprise, Ethan Hayes walked straight towards her. As Ethan Hayes got closer, Emily Carter's heart became more and more nervous. "Senior," Ethan Hayes said, stopping in front of her, "this is for you." Emily Carter took the box but didn't rush to open it. Ethan Hayes said, "I'm really sorry about breaking your bracelet last time." Emily Carter immediately understood what was in the box. She glanced around. Many freshmen and sophomores were holding banners and shouting for them at the school pep rally, and the sound reverberated throughout the area. She smiled and handed the box back. "No need." Ethan Hayes seemed to want to hand it to her, but she refused. Emily Carter said with a smile, "Although it's broken, let's just say that thing has been returned to its rightful owner." From 8th grade, that bracelet had been like her obsession. It had been 4 years, and now that the bracelet was broken, let the boundless emotions be returned to their rightful owner. "Senior, have you liked him for 4 years?" Emily Carter said, "More than 4 years." After her SATs/college entrance exams, she went to college. On the day of the school pep rally, she proudly maintained her pride in front of Ethan Hayes. She wouldn't bow her head, and she couldn't bow her head. She told Ethan Hayes in another way that she didn't like him anymore. But was that really the last year? No, it was just that later, this love went from being known by him alone to being known only by herself. "This is the 14th year I've loved him. He got married, and I went to see it, to see how that boy had grown into a man." When Ethan Hayes got married, he posted a wedding invitation on social media. He couldn't wait to invite everyone he knew to attend his wedding with Chloe Bennet. He wanted to tell everyone that he loved Chloe Bennet. Emily Carter didn't go inside on the wedding day. It wasn't so much that she shouldn't, but rather that she didn't dare. She saw the wedding entrance from outside the door. He held his lover's hand and led her forward step by step. "The little prince I met back then has now married the girl who danced ballet in front of him." There was no master of ceremonies at this wedding. Ethan Hayes completed the ceremony himself. He asked Chloe Bennet, "Will you marry me?" A burst of cheers erupted in the hall. Emily Carter, standing behind the door, suddenly smiled, touched a ring on her other hand, and lightly parted her lips, but didn't know what she said. Let her live in a dream for the only time in these 14 years. After the vows were exchanged, Emily Carter took one last look at his back and walked out of the hotel. She took off the broken bracelet on her hand, which had been made from the pendant that year. She took out a small box from her purse, carefully placed it inside, and closed the box. When she left, she placed the box on the concierge desk at the hotel entrance and turned to leave. That little prince can be considered to have grown into a real prince and become someone else's prince. The day I didn't peek was the day I said goodbye to the past.